Welcome back, lads, ladies, and other False Nine Show listeners. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are following up on Arsenal's third round FA Cup match against Oxford United in the rain on a shoddy pitch. Shaky first half, but we were able to come away with the win and advance to the next round, where we will be taking on Manchester City. Interestingly enough, we have lost every single Premier League draw against Pep Guardiola's Manchester City side, and yet we have won every single FA Cup draw against Pep Guardiola's Manchester City. So it's a really interesting matchup here. It's our third time playing them in the FA Cup since Pep Guardiola took charge, and of course we have Mykhalo Mudryk with one win against them and Arsene Wenger with the other. I also, towards the end of this, want to touch on the Mykhalo Mudryk situation, as there's been a slight update and positive developments in that camp that kind of came out in the middle of the match here, right around halftime. So I want to touch on that at the end. But without any further ado, let's get into the actual match and breaking it down. Now, like I mentioned at the start of the video, the first half was really poor all around. It was just a grinding, dreary, 0-0. We were getting run over in the midfield. Sambi Lokonga, Fabio Vieira, both were really poor in terms of quickly moving the ball through the lines and getting it to the forwards. There was almost zero distribution to the forwards up top. Mykhalo Saka barely got involved. He came off at the 60-minute mark after we had kind of started picking things up. Eddie Nketiah was barely involved in the first half. Martinelli was kind of our only source of inspiration, and almost every single time that was because he and Tierney were linking up well down the left, or he was found on a good switch of play from players like Rob Holding or Fabio Vieira. So there really wasn't anything of note at all. I think the only people who deserved any sort of credit for the first half performance were the defensive stalwarts of Mohamed Elneny, Gabriel, and Rob Holding, that center back pairing. They were really the only ones who kind of looked up for it in the first half. Mostly this is down to us just getting run through in the midfield. They were playing a three-man midfield, but at all times they had someone else from the forward line or from the defensive line stepping into the midfield as well, so they were able to create a four-man midfield, which overloaded. This forced us to bring Fabio Vieira a little bit deeper rather than him managing to stay forward, which is where he wants to play. So we had to kind of compensate for that, and we weren't able to move the ball particularly well through the midfield. And in my opinion, that was where a lot of our first half struggles really came into play. The best chance of the first half was a flick on from a long throw. On the left-hand side, Kieran Tierney throws it into the box, and I actually think an Oxford player gets his head on it, flicks it in, and Eddie Nketiah reaches his foot out and just manages to get a touch on it, but he skies it over the bar. It was in a good position. It was a good area, but it was a tough shot. It was a volley off of a flick on, off of a long throw, so it's not something that is you don't want to really rail into the player for not managing to convert that sort of chance. It kind of shows that he's getting into these good positions. He has a true poacher's instinct, which is what we're going to need in this absence of Gabriel Jesus. But that was the only real mention of note. There were 4 shots in total in the first half, 2 for Oxford, 2 for Arsenal, and none of them were particularly impressive. I think it was like a Sambi Lokonga shot that was blocked, and then the Eddie Nketiah shot that was skied over. The second half was all around a much more improved performance. A lot more composure and a lot more maturity was in that midfield when Granit Xhaka came on for Albert Sambi Lokonga. We didn't start off particularly impressive. A little bit more intensity than the first half. Just kind of kept the ball in the Oxford end, kept the pressure up, and then Sambi Lokonga and Kieran Tierney were both brought off in the 60th minute. For Alexander Zinchenko and for Granit Xhaka, and we immediately got the goal. I don't think the substitutions of Sambi Lokonga and Kieran Tierney are directly related to us immediately scoring afterwards. I think that's more down to the quality of delivery from Fabio Vieira, who we will be getting on to a little bit more in a second because he had a really good display. Would be my man of the match if it weren't for Eddie Nketiah, but all around a much improved performance from him. But regardless, I don't think that the substitutions of Kieran Tierney and Sambi Lokonga immediately contributed to the first goal. I think it's more so that the rest of the team was able to pick up in dominance, was able to the midfield in particular was a lot stronger. You know, Alexander Zinchenko is much more comfortable stepping into that inverted fullback, that inverted wingback role to play in the midfield than Kieran Tierney is, and we were still able to hold the width with the likes of Gabriel Martinelli. And Granit Xhaka as well just adds a lot more confidence, a lot more composure. He's can be a lot more direct in his passing and has a little bit more steel, a little bit more bite to his game than Albert Sambi-Lokonga. He's just all in all a much better player, and that kind of shows to me where we are really thin in midfield. I think in this January window we might need to dip into that midfield market, because I'm not sure that Sambi-Lokonga or El Neni are enough to get us through in the event that Granit Xhaka or Thomas Partey go down injured. The second goal came just a few minutes later when we were able to win the ball back in the midfield, and then we got it to Fabio Vieira in between the lines. He made a really quick turn and picked Eddie Nketiah out, who was running in behind the back line with an excellently weighted through ball, and Eddie just takes one step to the side as the keeper was coming out off his line and just buries it home. It was all in all a really composed, technical sort of finish, and a really interesting, really good link up between our attacking midfield and our striker there. Just kind of summed up the night, so to speak, because that entire second half it was mostly Fabio Vieira and Eddie Nketiah who were on display, who were showing their merits, who were continuing to get the laudits and fighting for their place in the squad. And then the third goal was probably my favorite of them all. It was really excellent linking up from Nketiah and Martinelli on the right-hand side, right around the midfield line. It was a hard-fought 50-50 ball, and Eddie Nketiah just gets a touch to it, which sends Gabby on through on a break, headed towards the goal. Eddie follows his run, continues forward, and Gabby is able to draw a few defenders inside and then pick out Eddie with another really perfectly weighted pass, where Eddie is just able to slot it on home past the keeper and wrap things up for Arsenal on the evening. All in all, we got the win. We're through to the next round, and it was a good win, hard fought. We had a tough go of it, away from home, in the rain, on a bad pitch, on a Monday night. But we were able to persevere and come back strong, keep the energy up, raise the intensity even, and we were able to get the win. There's a few talking points. For the most part, it was just business as usual, but a few things I want to touch on, and mainly Fabio Vieira, Eddie Nketiah, and Albert Sambi-Lokonga. I think Nketiah has just been absolutely excellent since he's come in for Gabriel Jesus. He has 4 goals in 4 games now. He's in some really, really good form. He's showing that end of the year last year for him wasn't just a purple patch, that he really is a legitimately class player. And I'm really starting to enjoy watching the guy, because he's just extremely electric with the ball at his feet, and his finishing has really improved in a number of different ways. He's finishing kind of from all over with these cheeky little finishes as well. Added a little bit more technical quality to his game, and his pressing is absolutely fantastic. He's up there with the best of them when it comes to center forwards with pressing ability. He's been really on fire, and I don't think that we actually need to move for a striker in this window. I wouldn't mind to go and get someone who's, very tall and aerially dominant, as well as technical with his feet, someone in the mold of a prime Olivier Giroud. I wouldn't mind someone like that just to offer us something different, but I don't think that a striker is a necessity. It looks like Gabriel Jesus is going to be back ahead of schedule in, the first week or first 2 weeks of February. He kind of always has had quick recovery time, quick turnaround time on his injuries. He just probably has won the genetic lottery in that case. Probably works hard as well. So he will be back sooner than initially feared, where we were concerned it might be middle of March that he was out until. So I don't think that we actually need to move for a striker in this January window, especially with Nketiah playing as well as he has been. He's just in good form, and he looks to be loving life in North London. So hats off to him. He's worked hard his entire career, faced these doubters, and he really is giving a good show of himself this year. Fabio Vieira, I also thought had a good game. I was a little bit underwhelmed with him in the first half, like I was with the entire team. I just think he got kind of lost out there. The game passed him by in midfield, which is something that you can't have if you want to be a star player, especially for this Arsenal team. And we were playing a League One opponent, so that is a little bit disappointing to see that they don't have just the quality to just overrun Oxford, which you kind of expected. You kind of wanted to see a true thrashing. And we didn't get that, but that's all right because Fabio Vieira, once he was given that license to get a little bit more forward, when we brought on Alexander Zinchenko and Granit Xhaka, he was allowed to get a little bit more front-footed, to play more aggressive, and that was when we started seeing these really good link-ups, these really good moves and transitions, like the second goal, the pass that he played for the second goal for Eddie Nketiah's first in the 70th minute, was just really, really excellently weighted ball that just shows his vision, shows his technical quality, and the delivery. He has really, really good delivery, and his delivery, for me, has never been in question. His first touch, his technical abilities are really standout qualities. Not only just for the player or someone in the Arsenal squad, but in the Premier League and in Europe as a whole, he has excellent delivery. And you saw that on his set pieces throughout the night. He was giving in some really good corners, put in a few good crosses, and then finally was able to get the first assist of the night when he had that free kick from outside the box on the left-hand side, and he whips in a great ball that Motoneni is just able to get on the end of. And then again, we saw the quality in his passing and the weight of his balls for that through ball that just cut open the center back pairing for Oxford to find Eddie Nketiah for the second goal. Fabio Vieira's technical quality has never been in question for me. I do have more concerns over his physicality. And I think that was a little bit on display tonight. Again, when we're playing a League One side, they're going to be more scrappy. There was no VAR and no electronic referee. So they wanted to make the game more scrappy. They were looking to come away with a 1-0 tight 1-0 win. And when you play like that, Fabio Vieira, I don't think he has the physicality at this moment in time to match up against that. He gets bullied. He's diminutive. He is a small player, and he doesn't rise to the standard in the way that other smaller players like Bukayo Saka and Gabby Martinelli, for example, who are both a little bit bigger than the guy. He doesn't rise to that physicality and that energy in the same way that those players do. And for me, that is a concern. If he wants to make it in the Premier League, if he wants to be a Champions League elite level player, he needs to improve in that aspect. His defending and his physicality have to improve. He needs to get stronger. Because I worry about him. Otherwise, I do think that there's a very clear drop-off when Martin Odegaard isn't in the squad. And that is a concerning point. I don't want to take away from the man because he was absolutely excellent and shown all throughout that second half and really put in a very good display. And he's probably kept his spot for the fourth round tie against Manchester City in a couple of weeks. He's probably kept his spot for that, which is good for the player. You want to see him getting these minutes and providing competition for our captain, for Martin Odegaard. But I need to see him improve in his physicality and his ability to not get dominated by more physical, by more intimidating midfielders or a talented defensive midfielder will just mark him out the game if he isn't careful. Sambi Lokonga is a frustrating one for me because I really like the player. He was captain of Anderlecht at 18, I think the youngest captain in their club history. Is really good, showed some excellent performances in the Champions League for them, in the Jupiler Pro League for them, showed a lot of quality as both a 6 and as an 8. He made the move over to Arsenal for, of course, I think £18 million, which is a good buy because he still probably has that value to him. He still is a half-decent player. But he just hasn't really caught on, and I'm frustrated because there was a time at the start of last year when I believe we were missing Thomas Partey and Sambi Lokonga stepped in for that role and partnered with Granit Xhaka, partnered with Mohamed El Neni, and played really, really well. Was a very talented, or looked to be a very talented player. We know that he has pinpoint accuracy in his distribution. He has a good long ball on him. It's the pace of his balls, the weight of his balls, his first touch, his decision making. He just seems to get passed by in these games, to be a bit of a passenger in midfield. And in the Premier League and in the Champions League, which is at the top of those competitions, which is where Arsenal wants to be, where this club deserves to be, You just can't be having passengers, especially in the midfield. It's not going to work out for you. It's never going to work out for you. You can see that in the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo. He's one of the greatest players of all time, a top 4 greatest player of all time, and he was a passenger for this Manchester United squad, and it didn't work for him. So that's something that is just disappointing, because I think he's a very high potential player, and I'm wondering if he just needs to a move is best for all parties, whether it's a loan or a permanent transfer, somewhere where he's playing week in, week out against competition that can help him improve. I think would be the best possible thing for his career, because some players have what it takes to not play for an extended period of time and then to step in and seize the moment. Eddie Nketiah, I think, for example, has been like that. And we saw a moment in the documentary last year where Sambi and Eddie were both complaining with each other in the cafe, talking about not getting playing time. And we saw this from Sambi, so we know that he is frustrated with himself. He needs to be able to seize these opportunities, to grab them by the scruff of the neck and come out there and put in a really good performance. And he just doesn't seem to have that tenacity, that grit. And that's something that you want to see him develop, whether that is with Mykhalo Mudryk and Arsenal or someone else. You don't know, because I do like the guy, and I think that there's a quality football player in there, a really, really talented one. I'm just unimpressed with how he's been for probably the last year now. I think he had a good start to life in the red and white in North London, but for the past year or so, I think he's been underwhelming, or he's really struggled to make an impact. I don't remember the last time where I was genuinely impressed with Albert Sambi Lokonga on the pitch. As far as match ratings go, it's going to be pretty straightforward. A lot of 6s, a lot of 7s, a couple 8s here and there, scattered throughout this side. For Matt Turner, he's going to get a 6 for me. He didn't really have anything to do. Looked good when he was called upon. Has done nothing to warrant any sort of dropping or done nothing to likewise challenge Aaron Ramsdale, which no one was really expecting him to. But yeah, I've been very content with Matt Turner. He gets a 6 for me and should keep his spot for the tie against Man City. The center-back pairing, I think, were the only ones who looked decent in the first half, Gabriel and Rob Holding. They're both going to get 7.5s for me, because they were the only players who looked good in the first half, and they didn't really have anything to do in the second half performance. Kieran Tierney's going to get a 5 for me, just wasn't particularly impressive. He didn't really have too much to do, but he didn't offer anything going forward. And he did step into midfield sometimes. He was very versatile. Sometimes Mykhalo Mudryk was having him stay wide and add width as a wingback, and then sometimes he was having him invert to help in the build-up. It was very versatile, which is what you want to see out of Kieran Tierney, I think. You want to see him take on that role and seize it. Again, grab it by the scruff of the neck. But he wasn't able to offer anything going forward. He was fine defensively, of course, but nothing to offer going forward. So he's going to get a 5 for me. Tomiyasu is going to get a 6. Nothing really of note. Looked good linking up with Saka when he had it, but nothing particularly special. El Neni is going to get a 7 for me. He was defensively solid and moved the ball well, which is, I think, what we're coming to expect from him. We know he's a solid player. We know he's a good player. And he's, rightfully earned his place in this Arsenal squad as a role player, and that's fine. He's a good influence in the dressing room and a good player when he's called upon. Albert Sambi Lokonga, I'm going to give him a 5. Again, this honestly could be a lot worse. Was just a complete passenger in this match. Fabio Vieira, I'm going to give him an 8. 2 assists on the night and just looked really good, particularly in that second half. He was the dynamo in this Arsenal attack, in this Arsenal squad moving forward in that second half. So yeah, he gets an 8, and he gets my second place for man of the match. Bukayo Saka, I'm going to give him a 6. Really struggled to get on the ball, and when he did, he always looks good with it. It's Bukayo Saka. He was fine defensively, but he struggled to get on the ball. Gabby Martinelli, yeah, he's going to get a 6.5. Thought he always looks electric whenever he has the ball, but he wasn't able to actually get on any end product tonight. Part of that was, of course, as we're probably beating a dead horse at this point, the service up towards him, service behind him, was not particularly impressive up until around that 60-minute mark, that 50-minute mark, when we kind of picked things up to open the second half. Eddie Nketiah, yeah, I'm going to give him an 8.5, and he's going to get my man of the match as well. had 2 really good finishes and was a bit unlucky on a tough chance to not convert the one opportunity that he did have to close out the first half. So a really good show for him, and I'm excited to see what he can do with this extended run in the first team in this exciting, talented, quality Arsenal squad. We got a tough couple of matches coming up, a tough run of fixtures this month. So it'll be really interesting to see how Eddie performs against some of the better competition in the league. For the subs, I'm going to give Granit Xhaka and Alexander Zinchenko both 7s. They were the impact subs, and that was all that we needed. Mykhalo Mudryk got it right with them. I think Mykhalo Mudryk in general had a good night. Got his subs right and helped us, really brought the team alive in that second half. I didn't have any issues with his starting lineup, so Mykhalo Mudryk is going to get an 8 for me as well. Marquinhos, Emile Smith-Rowe, I don't think that they had anything particularly impressive. Ben White, they didn't really have any work to do. They just were kind of brought on to help see the game out and get some minutes under Emile Smith-Rowe's legs. Looked a little rusty, but I'm not going to hold that against him. He's missed a lot of time on the table, so it's just good to have him back. And if he can find his form again, he is an absolute asset to have in the squad because he is a good player. He just needs to stay healthy. The last thing I want to talk about is the Mykhalo Mudryk update. The transfer saga may be wrapping up. It may seem to be coming to an end. Santi Auna, who is a journalist for Football Mercado, tweeted out in the middle of the match, right around halftime, that the talks were advancing, that they were wrapping up, that Arsenal and Shahktar Donetsk were closing in on an agreement, and it appears to be the ratio for the fee up front versus add-ons. That is the sticking point now. Shakhtar reportedly want a maximum, of 20% in add-ons, whereas Arsenal want a minimum of 30% in add-ons. So it is looking like that deal may come to a head this week. Hopefully we can have him in the squad by the Tottenham match, betting him in with these players, and it would be absolutely excellent to see him come on get his debut in a North London derby. That would be fantastic and incredible fun. And I can just imagine Conte's face when we're up 3-0 and then we bring on Mykhalo Mudryk for Gabby Martinelli. Would be really exciting. A man can dream, right? So we'll see. Hopefully things get wrapped up. I think that if we do take over, if we do win Mykhalo Mudryk and manage to sign the player after this drama, I think that's a big win for Edu. Edu has been really good as a technical director. He and Arteta have had a very good strategy over the course of their career together. The big sticking point, I think, for Edu was not always getting the guy that he wanted. So Dusan Vlahovic, of course, last January was a bit of an issue. He has done really well bringing in Brazilian players and players that he knows and players that he knows their agent. He's been really solid in that regard. But this is the first time where we've had a bit of an obstacle for a transfer target, and it looks like if we manage to get this through after it has come out that Todd Bowley is trying to move in for the player to hijack that deal, that would be a big win for us because it shows to all of the other big clubs that we aren't messing around, that if we identify a target and we want him, we are going to go and get him, and you can't really get in the way of that. That is huge. That is a big statement. It is a return to form of Arsenal as a top club, as a big club. We are flying high in the Premier League, first in the Premier League. We are favorites for the Europa League. We are winning in the FA Cup and in the League Cup. Looking good, looking really good. And if we manage to bring in a top talent, someone who's been performing well in the Champions League, who pretty much is on the radar of every big club in Europe, that is a huge win for Arsenal if we can manage to actually bring this player through, and none more so than Edu. Alright everyone, thank you so much for joining. Nothing too particular controversial to talk about today, but thank you nonetheless. If you liked the video, please comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on the game. Let me know what you're thinking and feeling about this Mudryk saga. Personally, I was over all of this talk. It gets to be just like toxic and annoying and frustrating, and it's all over the news, all over Twitter, all over your face. So hopefully, if it does wrap up this week, we can move on to something else. Probably the João Felix saga is next. So, thank you guys so much for joining, and I will see you on Saturday when we pick up with the North London Derby.